A handshake should have lasted no more than a second. One hand reaches forward. Another hand reaches back. Two people acknowledge each other, and life moves on. But on a gray autumn morning in the heart of the city, a single refused handshake became the spark that exposed pride, transformed lives, and reminded an entire company that true worth can never be measured by appearance. The silence that filled the executive boardroom that day was so heavy that even the hum of the air conditioning seemed to disappear. A man stood beside the conference table with his hand extended. His jacket was faded from years of wear. His shoes had been repaired more than once. Fine lines around his eyes revealed countless sleepless nights. He looked like someone who carried responsibilities far greater than his strength. Across from him stood one of the most powerful business leaders in the country. Elegant, successful, admired, and completely mistaken. She glanced at his hand, then at his clothes. Without saying a word, she turned away. The handshake never happened. Several executives exchanged uncomfortable looks. No one spoke. The man slowly lowered his hand. A faint sadness crossed his face, though he quickly hid it behind a calm smile. What nobody in that room knew was that the tired-looking stranger standing before them possessed enough authority to change every career in the building with a single signature. Yet that wasn't what hurt him. What hurt was the realization that despite all the progress society claimed to make, people still judged one another by appearances before learning the truth. His name was Adrian Hale. At 39 years old, he had already lived through enough heartbreak for several lifetimes. Years earlier, Adrian's life had seemed blessed beyond measure. He had married his college sweetheart, Elena, a woman whose laughter could brighten even the darkest day. Together they built a simple but happy life in a quiet suburb outside the city. Their greatest joy arrived when their daughter, Lily, was born. From the moment Adrian held her in his arms, everything changed. His priorities shifted. His dreams evolved. Success no longer meant money or recognition. Success meant hearing Lily laugh. Success meant sitting around the dinner table with the people he loved most. Success meant waking up every morning knowing his family was safe. For several years, life seemed perfect. Then everything fell apart. It started with headaches. Elena dismissed them at first. Then came fatigue. Then medical appointments. Then frightening test results. Within months, doctors discovered a rare and aggressive illness. Adrian spent every dollar he could access trying to save her. He sought specialists, experimental treatments, private consultations. Anything. Everything. Nothing worked. One rainy evening, while holding his wife's hand in a hospital room filled with quiet machines and fading hope, Adrian listened as she whispered her final words. "Take care of our little girl." Hours later, she was gone. The world continued moving. Traffic still filled the streets, businesses still opened, bills still arrived. But Adrian felt as though time had stopped. For weeks he moved through life like a shadow. Grief consumed him. Yet every morning Lily climbed into his lap and asked questions only children could ask. "When is Mommy coming home? Why are you crying? Can we still read bedtime stories?" Those questions forced him to keep going. No matter how broken he felt, his daughter needed him. So he became both father and mother. Every morning before sunrise, Adrian prepared breakfast. He packed school lunches. He braided Lily's hair using techniques he learned from online videos after countless failed attempts. Sometimes the braids looked uneven. Sometimes they fell apart by noon. But Lily always smiled and told him they were beautiful. After walking her to school, Adrian headed to work. Most people believed he was simply a maintenance technician employed by a manufacturing company on the edge of town. And in many ways, he was. He repaired equipment, handled mechanical problems, worked overtime. His hands became rough. His shoulders ached constantly. His clothes carried traces of grease and machine oil. Yet he never complained. Because every paycheck represented school supplies, groceries, rent, and opportunities for Lily. The people around him saw an ordinary working-class father. What they didn't know was that Adrian possessed a secret he had carefully hidden for nearly a decade. Long before tragedy entered his life, he had been heir to one of the country's most promising technology enterprises. His father, Victor Hale, was a visionary engineer whose inventions revolutionized industrial automation. Years earlier, Victor founded a company called Novodyne Systems. What began in a rented warehouse eventually grew into a corporate giant valued in the billions. When Victor passed away unexpectedly, ownership of the company became divided among investors, board members, and family interests. Adrian inherited the largest share, 60%. A controlling stake, enough to dominate every major decision. Yet, unlike many heirs, Adrian had little interest in corporate politics. He preferred quiet evenings with his family over board meetings. He preferred genuine conversations over business negotiations. After Elena's death, his desire for privacy became even stronger. He stepped away from public life. He entrusted daily operations to experienced executives. He ignored media attention. And he focused entirely on raising Lily. Years passed. Novodyne continued growing. Profits increased. Investors celebrated. Stock prices climbed. Everything appeared successful from the outside. But appearances can be deceiving. One evening, after Lily had fallen asleep, Adrian sat alone at the kitchen table reviewing company reports. At first, the numbers looked excellent. Revenue was strong. Expansion projects were thriving. Shareholders were happy. Then he noticed something troubling. Employee satisfaction had fallen dramatically. Staff turnover had doubled. Healthcare benefits had been reduced. Family assistance programs had quietly disappeared. Complaints from workers had increased year after year. The company was making more money than ever. But people were suffering. Adrian reviewed additional reports. The pattern became impossible to ignore. Somewhere along the way, Novodyne had forgotten the values upon which it had been built. His father often said that businesses existed to improve lives, not merely generate profits. Now those principles seemed lost. For several nights Adrian couldn't sleep. The issue bothered him deeply. Eventually, he made a decision. He wouldn't return as owner. He wouldn't arrive in luxury vehicles. He wouldn't announce his authority. Instead, he would observe quietly. He wanted to see the truth. He wanted to understand what everyday employees experienced. Most importantly, he wanted honest answers. The company's chief executive officer was a woman named Victoria Sterling. At 36, she was considered one of the brightest leaders in the industry. Business magazines praised her relentlessly. Investors adored her. Competitors feared her. Under her leadership, Novodyne achieved unprecedented financial growth. But reports suggested that growth came at a cost. Victoria believed discipline created success. Efficiency mattered above all else. Weakness had no place in business. At least, that was what she told herself. What few people understood was that Victoria's obsession with perfection came from her own difficult past. She grew up in poverty. Her father abandoned the family. Her mother worked multiple jobs. Every achievement required struggle. Every opportunity demanded sacrifice. As a result, Victoria developed an unshakable belief that success belonged only to those strong enough to seize it. Compassion, in her view, often distracted from results. Over time, she became respected, then feared, then isolated. The morning Adrian arrived at Novodyne headquarters, heavy clouds covered the city's skyline. Rain streaked down enormous glass windows. Employees hurried through revolving doors carrying laptops and coffee cups. The building radiated wealth. Marble floors, modern artwork, expensive furnishings. No one paid attention to the quiet man entering through the main entrance. Adrian approached the reception desk. The receptionist offered a professional smile. "Can I help you?" "Good morning," Adrian replied warmly. "I have a scheduled meeting with Ms. Sterling." The receptionist glanced at her screen. Confusion appeared on her face. She searched repeatedly, made several phone calls. Eventually she nodded. "Please wait. Someone will escort you upstairs." Adrian thanked her. Most visitors would have complained about the delay. He simply sat quietly and observed. He noticed exhausted employees rushing between meetings. He noticed security guards standing for hours without acknowledgement. He noticed cleaning staff working invisibly while others ignored them. And he greeted every person he encountered. Some smiled back. Others seemed surprised. One elderly janitor stopped briefly and thanked him for saying good morning. That small interaction told Adrian more about company culture than any report ever could. Eventually, an assistant guided him to the executive floor. Minutes later, he entered the boardroom. Victoria Sterling sat at the head of a long conference table. Several senior executives occupied nearby seats. The moment she saw Adrian, disappointment flashed across her face. She expected a wealthy consultant. Perhaps an influential investor. Certainly not someone who looked like he had just finished a factory shift. "You requested this meeting?" she asked. "Yes." Victoria leaned back. "You have 10 minutes. Adrian smiled politely. "That should be enough." He placed documents on the table. Reports, employee surveys, internal assessments, carefully collected evidence. Victoria barely glanced at them. "What exactly is your role?" she asked. "Someone who cares about this company." Her expression hardened. "That's not an answer. It is from my perspective." Several executives exchanged curious looks. There was something unusual about him. He seemed completely comfortable despite standing before some of the most powerful people in the industry. He wasn't intimidated. He wasn't trying to impress anyone. He simply spoke with quiet confidence. For nearly 20 minutes, Adrian discussed workplace morale, employee retention, and family support initiatives. His observations were thoughtful, practical, human. Victoria grew increasingly irritated. She viewed his comments as criticism, and criticism was something she rarely tolerated. Finally, she interrupted him. "With all due respect, you seem very passionate. But you don't understand what it takes to run a company of this size." Adrian met her gaze. "I think I understand more than you realize." The statement lingered in the air. Victoria stared at the screen in disbelief. Her face turned pale. A single realization echoed through her mind. He could have destroyed her. One public announcement, one board meeting, one decision. That was all it would take. Yet he hadn't threatened her, hadn't embarrassed her, hadn't even revealed his identity. Instead, he walked away. That fact haunted her most. For the first time in years, Victoria questioned the person she had become. She remembered employees she ignored, assistants she dismissed, workers whose names she never learned, people she overlooked because they didn't appear important. Suddenly, those memories felt unbearable. The next morning, she canceled every meeting. Then she began searching for Adrian. It wasn't difficult. Unlike wealthy executives, Adrian's life followed a simple routine. She eventually found him in a neighborhood park on the city's west side. Children played across green fields. Parents sat nearby. Autumn leaves drifted through cool air. Adrian sat on a bench watching Lily chase butterflies. The little girl laughed freely. Purely. The kind of laughter adults often forget. Victoria approached slowly. When Adrian noticed her, surprise crossed his face. Neither spoke immediately. Finally, Victoria broke the silence. "I owe you an apology." Adrian waited. "I judged you." She swallowed hard. "I saw your clothes before I saw you." The words sounded unfamiliar. Vulnerable. Honest. For a woman accustomed to control, admitting fault felt terrifying. Adrian looked toward Lily. She was spinning in circles, completely absorbed in childhood joy. "My daughter taught me something years ago," he said quietly. Victoria listened. "People remember how you make them feel long after they forget everything else." The simplicity of the statement struck her deeply. She lowered her gaze. "I want to do better." For a long moment, Adrian studied her face. He searched for arrogance, defensiveness, excuses. Instead, he found sincerity. And sincerity deserves a chance. "Then start today." Those 3 words changed everything. Over the following months, Novodyne began transforming. Not through expensive acquisitions, not through technological breakthroughs, through people. Victoria initiated listening sessions with employees. She visited departments she had never entered. She learned names, heard stories, discovered struggles hidden behind productivity reports. Single parents received flexible schedules. Healthcare benefits improved. Scholarship programs returned. Mental health resources expanded. Workers finally felt seen. For many employees, the changes seemed miraculous. But Adrian understood the truth. Compassion had always been possible. Someone simply needed to choose it.as for Adrian. He remained exactly who he had always been. Every morning he prepared Lily's breakfast. He attended school events. He helped neighbors. He continued living modestly despite immense wealth. Because money had never defined him. Character did. 1 year later, Novodyne hosted its largest company gathering in history. Thousands of employees filled a massive auditorium. Excitement buzzed throughout the crowd. Most expected announcements about profits and expansion. Instead, they received something far more meaningful. Victoria stood beside Adrian on stage. The audience applauded enthusiastically. Many already knew the story, others had heard only fragments. Adrian stepped forward first. The room fell silent. He looked across thousands of faces, then smiled. "Our greatest achievement isn't our revenue," he said. "It isn't our market share." He paused. "It's remembering that every person matters." Thunderous applause erupted. Many employees wiped tears from their eyes. Then Victoria approached the microphone. Emotion softened her normally composed expression. "A year ago," she began, "I refused to shake this man's hand." The audience became completely silent. Victoria turned toward Adrian. "Today, standing beside him is one of the greatest honors of my life." The crowd rose to its feet. Applause echoed through the auditorium. Some cheered. Others cried. And Adrian simply smiled. Because the moment was never about him. It was about growth, redemption, humanity. The same hand that had once been rejected had ultimately united an entire company. Long after the event ended, employees continued sharing the story. New hires heard it during orientation. Managers repeated its lesson. Executives remembered it during difficult decisions. The story became part of Novodyne's identity. Not because a wealthy owner revealed himself, but because two people chose humility over pride. Years later, whenever someone asked Adrian about success, he gave the same answer. Success isn't measured by how many people work for you. It's measured by how many people feel valued because of you. And whenever Victoria spoke to young leaders, she shared a lesson she learned the hard way. Never assume you know someone's worth by looking at them. The person standing quietly in the corner may possess more strength, wisdom, and dignity than anyone else in the room. Because appearances fade, titles disappear, money comes and goes, but kindness leaves a mark that lasts forever. And sometimes, the person we overlook today becomes the very person who changes our tomorrow.